what they've discussed is what's been termed a governance boycott. So refusing to take part in FIFA council or committee meetings, refusing to ratify FIFA decisions, and even one of the more extreme options would be to discuss establishing rival international football competitions.
The president of FIFA, Gianni Infantino, is under enormous pressure to resign, and the English and Welsh Football Associations have added to that pressure, putting their support for his re-election as FIFA president. We can talk to James Restall, who's the head of sport for the Times and the Sunday Times, and has come breathlessly into the studio with, I gather, James, some breaking news.
Yes, Martin Ziegler, who has led the way reporting on this since the story broke on Tuesday. He's just delivered a new update, which is live on the Times app right now. An alliance has been formed with the aim of toppling Infantino, with the leaders of the European, Concacaf and Asian confederations planning to paralyse FIFA in a governance sense. They've discussed a number of strategies to use if Infantino insists on remaining in power and seeking re-election in March. And what they've discussed is what's been termed a governance boycott. So refusing to take part in FIFA council or committee meetings, refusing to ratify FIFA decisions, and even one of the more extreme options would be to discuss establishing rival international football competitions. So today, as we're breaking on the Times website now, it feels like the moves to try to oust Infantino are stepping up another notch.
James, this is cranking up the pressure several notches, isn't it? Until this moment, our understanding was that, yes, that UEFA were linking arms and advancing on Infantino. There was talk about consulting with lawyers, maybe taking some form of legal action down the track, regulatory and also in law. Now we're talking about simply making FIFA, an organisation unable to function. We're taking away the vital participation in its role that they would need from organisations like FIFA, simply, effectively shoving Infantino off the balcony.
Well, exactly, and as we saw with the opposition of these three confederations against the proposals to sell off stakes in the World Cup last week, the number of members for each of those confederations added up to a majority against those plans. So if those three confederations can stick together, that's quite a powerful block.
Yes.
Going forwards, and this is, as you say, John, this would be their way of frustrating the decision-making processes of FIFA, yes. and therefore trying to force Infantino's hand.
That really is going nuclear, James, isn't it? Because Infantino's position comes up for grabs in 2027. There would be a vote on his continuation or the installation of a new president at that point. They're just not waiting for that. And without the European football associations, without CONCACAF, North America and the Caribbean, without the Asian football association, you've got the numbers there already to bring him down, I think, haven't you? And this is just, they're not going to wait. They're going to make it simply impossible for him to stay there.
I think that's the point. I think the what was so remarkable last week was the speed at which UEFA organised and the speed at which they took that decision to boycott the FIFA international competitions, including the men's and women's World Cups, if those sell-off plans had gone through. Yeah. And that was ultimately the tipping point in seeing those plans revoked on Friday, late on Friday night. And again, the speed of the opposition, it's just kept accelerating, and I think that's what's been crucial in forcing their hand.
Surely, if there was any doubt, James, there's no further doubt. And we were reporting earlier on today that Gianni Infantino was seeking to draw on those what he may have thought were friendships in Washington. You know, he made Donald Trump his bestie in the run up to the World Cup and during the World Cup and after the World Cup. Today we see the reports that he was seeking to make contact with the White House, with the State Department, with Marco Rubio. And just moments ago we were reporting that Washington is denying there were any such meetings in the pipeline. It looks as if that was ever some kind of, I don't know, reinforcement, if that was ever any kind of, badly needed help, it just ain't there.
Well, no, and also another key part of this is, only 15 member nations as well have actually come out and publicly supported Infantino since this, and we know that he previously has commanded quite a large power block among those voting member nations, but only 15 have shown their hand and declared their support. So it's looking very difficult for the FIFA president from here.
Okay, so at this point, I guess all we can do is speculate about where we go from here, but we can speculate. So if Infantino's position is simply unsustainable, if he does then take the hint, it's about the loudest hint you've ever seen in your life, but if he takes the hint and walks the plank, where does that leave FIFA? Where does that leave the presidency of FIFA?
Well, a new leader would have to be found, and there would need to be a new candidate who united as many of the confederations and members as possible. I think in the short term, it's very much the ball's back in Infantino's court again, because we clearly see here that his major opponents have got a plan to make the rest of his time in charge completely untenable and unworkable. He effectively would become a lame duck president if they're able to enact this governance boycott as we're reporting. But yes, beyond then, it's a question of who can command the most support for a future leadership election. Yeah,
I mean, what do I know? Very little, but it seems to me, I've got some knowledge of watching the way political wheels turn. It looks as if his time is as good as up. And in the course of the threats which you catalogued for us, there was one which is, it certainly counts in the sort of nuclear category. It's the idea of alternative competitions, James.
Yeah, the UEFA actually had drawn up, I think almost 10 years ago, they drew up a plan for what would have been a global version of the Nations League, the competition that takes place in the autumn, the group stage, where we used to have international friendlies, and it provided more competitive matches between European sides of similar ranking. And there is a plan for a global version of this tournament, and in the end we got rather than pushing ahead with that, we ended up with the expanded Club World Cup competition, which we saw last summer in the USA. Now, this could be an idea that could be revived if they brought back the idea of a global nations league, which would have nations from these confederations who are opposing Infantino.
Right. And just to tie up loose ends in the moments that we have now left to us, James. So we now have the UEFA. We've got the giants of European football, including England, the Germanys, the France, the Spains. I mean, Italy would consider itself a giant, even though it hasn't been in a World Cup tournament for quite a while. And then you throw in, of course, the forces of Asia. You throw in the Caribbean and the Americas. Haven't mentioned actually the South American giants. Am I missing something here? The sort of the Brazil, the Uruguays, the Argentinas. What's the story with that?
Well, we haven't heard from them during this period, but again, one would imagine that they're asking themselves the questions. What form of international football and what future for international football do we want to be in? And clearly, it's far less appetising for them if they're in a version of international football that doesn't contain all of the best teams. And that's where that is where the power always lay, and the trump card that UEFA had.
They've been curiously quiet until this point.
Yeah, quiet until now. Well, they're still quiet.
Still quiet.
Still quiet.
Okay, well, let's wait to hear from them as well. James Restall, really good to hear from you. Thank you so much for that. With that breaking news there in the Times from Martin Ziegler, who has been leading on this story from the very beginning. Recommend you have a look at that in the Times online. All the latest. It's a fast developing story, as well as a very, very big one.